Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
You're listening to Bloomberg Businessweek with Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, as I mentioned, it's one of the most read stories on the Bloomberg terminal. It's today's big take. It's about the new retail tactic that's pushing Americans to buy more. The world's biggest packaged goods makers, including P&G, Unilever, and Edgewell, are using a tactic called Upflation to claw back sales in the U.S.'s more than $100 billion personal care and beauty market. With more is Deena Shanker, Bloomberg News consumer reporter. She wrote the story along with Leslie Patton. She's here in our Bloomberg studio. Deena, we know about inflation. We know about disinflation. Jay Powell certainly does. Shrinkflation, we know about that. What is upflation?
So upflation is something that we noticed happening where these major consumer goods companies saw sales falling in volume. People were just buying less. So they said, hey, we actually have a new version for you to buy. It's even better than the one that you don't want anymore, and it costs more too. So my favorite example is deodorant. The deodorant sales were falling. People just weren't buying as much deodorant as they used to. So a bunch of these companies came out with new products called all over body deodorant, so that if you're not just worried about the smell from your armpits, but maybe from the backs of your knees or your feet or your chest, you can now buy a whole new, more expensive product and cover your body with it to stop the sweating.
What an exciting opportunity. I have to say, I've never thought about the backs of my knees. So this is really interesting. I mean, is it working? How are consumers actually responding to this?
So the companies say that people are responding well. They're buying them. Doctors have expressed a bit more reservation on the need for such products. We spoke to, my colleague Leslie spoke to someone who was thinking about using it for night sweats. But you know, I mean, who among us has not woken up warm in the middle of the night and just discovered that you can, you know, turn on a fan or the air conditioning or take off your blanket? There are a lot of solutions out there that you might already have in your home.
So what exactly is the scope of the problem here? Just how bad is it out there for the personal care market of these large consumer products companies? Like, what's going on? Give us some numbers here.
Well, so basically what happened was that in COVID, a lot of people discovered that, you know, like they don't need to shave as much and they're not going anywhere.
Right.
So,
I remember Gillette talking about this, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so the volume sales have been falling each quarter, even though dollar sales are going up because they're raising prices because of inflation. Volume sales are down. And we're seeing it in food as well. We're hearing packaged food makers talk about it quarter after quarter, that volumes are falling. They don't know when they're going to stop falling. And so they're just trying to turn things around by basically offering you something they would think is very different, but we might not think is so different. I mean, is a specialized razor really worth double the price of the standard version?
Right. Is there anything specialized about it? I mean, that's a great example because for years, companies have been trying to make razors different and differentiate them in the marketplace. And like, if you look at the product lines from some companies, there's like a dozen different options and they all do the same thing. Yeah,
they all do the same thing. That's right. I mean, you might find some people who say that this particular razor did a particularly good job. And certainly the companies say that they're solving real problems and that these are, you know, different areas of the body call for different products. But, you know, I've been, I use a razor meant for a man's face, and it works just fine.
Well, you touched on what I was wondering, and that's basically the company's defense. I mean, when you went to them in reporting this story and said, hey, it kind of looks like you're just charging more for something that's essentially the same as a very similar product that you have right now. I mean, how did they justify that?
They see what they're doing as really based in the consumer. these companies have done a lot of market research and a lot of consumer surveys where that's how they found out people are worried about the smell of their feet and all of these other issues. And in some ways, this isn't so different from what companies have always done. Innovation is sort of the lifeline of any consumer goods company. But what I at least saw on the food side was what felt like an increased sense of desperation among the food companies to really turn things around. I mean, these are companies with really thin margins to begin with, even in good times. And so when they're seeing volumes fall 1%, 2%, quarter after quarter, they are really trying to figure out new messaging, new ways. I mean, one of my favorites was Doritos and Tostitos as side dishes and ingredients. And I was like, oh, that's
maybe in an omelet, you crush up some Doritos, put them in with your eggs.
I think everything works in an omelet, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they were actually talking about Cheetos dust, which they call Cheetle, as a coating for chicken.
I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, oh, well, you love fried.
Apparently, I really respond to marketing spin.
Yeah, I feel like everything that has been proposed in this article to you sounds like a great idea.
We talked.
Like, Katie would buy that. Katie would buy that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Katie would buy that. Yeah.
Wow, that sounds like a really fancy razor. That's terrible. Is this solely a U.S. phenomenon? Are we seeing other companies in other countries adopt similar tactics?
So what we're seeing is that consumers in other countries are doing something similar to what a lot of U.S. consumers are doing, which is cutting back. But the way that they are now marketing these solutions does seem to be very American.
Is there something different about this moment? Because you've been covering the food side of things for years, and these packaged food companies have always tried to innovate when it comes to new product lines. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And there are a lot of famous examples of times when it hasn't. Personal care companies have come out for years with new types of products. But are we at a point where there's kind of just like, I know this is like an uncreative way for me to ask this question, but are we just done innovating in this space? Are these like, is this like last ditch? Does it seem like a last ditch effort to you?
I see it less as companies are done innovating and more like consumers are getting smarter. Mm-hmm. Consumers are pinched by inflation. Our budgets are tighter. We don't want to throw away food. We don't want to buy a new stick of deodorant when the old one hasn't run out yet. I think people are just less willing right now to just light money on fire.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say is the difference in this period of time is that for the last couple of years, consumers who had never experienced an inflationary environment in their lifetimes were experiencing one. So maybe this time is different in that sense. Yeah,
I mean, if we think about sort of the kind of tales that our grandparents told us that they wouldn't buy paper, they would just make their grocery list on the back of their phone bill. Now it's like, well, yeah, why would I buy paper when I can take, Bloomberg offices have paper everywhere.
Wait a second, I did not know this. I thought you were going to say you just write it down on your phone. I thought that's where you were going.
I never take office supplies from the supply closet and bring them home.
It's good you said that on mic in front of the camera, so we have it for the record. I am curious, though. I mean, we're talking about staples here. I mean, maybe in the pandemic you could get away with not shaving or maybe not using a lot of deodorant, but I mean, does this sort of how do consumers deal with this? Basically, we've been talking about a trade down across industries as well. It seems like companies are trying to sort of trick consumers out of that trade down here. But how do you see this going when you think about the state of inflation right now and just how stretched people are feeling?
So this was actually what really brought me and Leslie together on this, was seeing that people weren't just cutting back on things like eating out at restaurants, which is always an extra treat. People were cutting back on things that we think of as essential. And there was something like just really, it really changes the way you think of that word. What is essential? Well, is it essential if half of it is going to end up in the garbage? No, it's not. So I will rethink what is essential food for my family. I used to think we had to have, a consumer might say, I used to think we had to have fresh fruit in the house at all times. But now I realize that some of that fruit ends up in the garbage. I could just buy frozen fruit And then we have fruit, but it doesn't end up in the garbage. Somehow now the fresh side of it is no longer essential. So I think we are seeing a big shift in how people take care of themselves and take care of their families. And there are, entire movements that are about just like existing on less stuff.
I just want to remind you, there's also fruit available at the Bloomberg offices.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
I've
just for the record.
and like Oreos and other things that
I've heard
that my kids asked for.
And chips.
So I've
Pretzels.
heard. So I've heard. What are the Cheetos dust called?
Cheetle.
Okay.
Gross.
Yeah.
I'm so into it.
A big thank you to Deena Shanker, Bloomberg News consumer reporter. Check out her story along with Leslie Patton on the Bloomberg Terminal.